Guys, welcome to the Let's Play Gang Beasts stats for 2016. Okay, so the gang played 3 games in 2016 and I'll be covering all of them. I'm going to be doing them individually, so I'm not going to be trying to combine stats from one or the other or trying to mix stuff together just because it would be too time consuming and I think it would be inaccurate. So we're going to go on a game by game basis. So the first game was the Let's Play Gang Beasts with Game Attack. And the first graph that I've put up on the board here is the average placement per map. So for example, bus top, you can see Jack came first. Ryan was the best on conveyor, for example. Wheel, it was Sam. Sean and I think Jack tied on train. It was Jack for fans, and then on container it was Ryan having a very strong placement or average. Okay, then on to the next one. This is the probability of different placements for each individual person. So this kind of gives you an idea of how people performed in general. As you can tell by the first places, Ryan and Jack were both tied, roughly at about somewhere between 30 to 35% for first, which generally means they held the lead pretty well, or they're more likely to come first. And holding up the rear, it was apparently Chad followed by Matt. Yeah, just in terms of like getting who got 8th place the most. And second was Sean, being quite a standout guy in terms of placement there. Okay, and then on to the last graph. This is the average placement per round. So for this video, the gang played 23 rounds, and as you can tell just by looking at the flow, that at some point after the first few rounds, it sort of diverged into 2 different games where you can see Chad, Matt, and Sam were sort of playing in their own field, and they ended up in a very, very similar position. And on the bottom half, you can see that it was Sean, Ryan, and Jack that were contesting for first, second, and third. And overall, you can see Sean was extremely consistent, and I think he did end up in first. Okay, so for this game in particular, these are the final placements and their average score over all of those rounds. So Sam in 6th with 3.79, Chad with 3.78, so very, very close. Matt with 3.74, also extremely close. And then quite a steep drop, a 0.6 drop-off. Jack in 3rd, Ryan 2nd, and Sean in 1st. So that is the first game. Moving on to Let's Play 8-Man Gang Beasts. So just a warning, the charts are going to get a little bit messy just because there's so many people at this point. Okay, so back again we have the graph of average placement per level. So in this, it's very hard to determine trends just by looking at specific things, but one of the general and more consistent things you can tell from this was, I believe this was the second game that they played, well, the first one of the year for them, and Jeremy had some experience doing the stream team stuff, and that shows. As you can see, Jeremy's placement is significantly lower than everyone else and almost in first across the board. And weirdly enough, Adam seems to be the worst if you look at it, but he has steep drops and they sort of cancel each other out, so you can look at him sort of as having like a critical effect. Like a high variance. Other than that, just looking at the specific trends, Gavin got better and then got worse over, like, in the beginning he did poorly, got slightly better, and then ended up doing worse by the end. Jeff got worse at the game and then slightly better and then worse again. Other than that, yeah, there's not too many noticeable trends. A few people, seemingly the 3, Jeff, I believe it's Jeff, Jack, and Bruce, both seemingly had a very similar trend to the start and end of the game, where they got slightly worse towards the middle, and then they slightly got better. Okay, moving on. Okay, so this might look like an absolute mess. This is the probability per person again of different placements. An immediate standout is Jeremy got over 45% of the first places in all of the rounds. So yeah, you can kind of guess who's winning this one. Yeah, and then just pulling up the rear in 8th is, I believe that is Jack. Yeah, other than that, there was, surprisingly, I believe through 6th and 7th, Jeremy didn't score at all. A lot of people had a very, very similar position over that point, as you can tell by like a bunch of straight lines at that point as well. Some people had 0% for third, if not, yeah, very commonly a lot of people didn't actually ever get third. Other than that, statistic-wise, looking through it, there weren't too many discernible patterns from this. It's quite random, to be honest, which is in its own, it's a good thing, because that explains competitions actually taking effect in some ways. With the exception of Jeremy, who's obviously, you can see big spikes towards the front and then it drops towards the end. Other than that, I believe, yeah, Jack was actually getting, not Jack, Jeff was actually getting worse. You can see that the majority of his area starts to accumulate near the end, and the same can be said of Adam, and the same can also be said of, I believe that would be Jack, yeah. One interesting fact I can pull from this was, I'm not sure who it was necessarily, but I think it was Jack. Someone had like 0 probabilities of ending in any position that was odd. So like, for example, you can see, I think it is Jack, where it's like 0 for third and 0 for fifth, and then, yeah, something along those lines. Moving on to the final graph of this section. Again, a clear standout is Jeremy in first, who was clearly playing his own game. No one was anywhere near him. He was the only person with an average under 3. Then there were 3 separate groupings towards the end. You can see that Gavin actually got much better at the game as time progressed. He started out extremely badly, and then his average dipped really low, and then he slightly got worse towards the end, but still a significant improvement. Some people, like Jack, just kept getting worse. Jack started strong and then just flailed, eventually ending up somewhere along the lines of 6th by the looks of it. But yeah, there was a definite contest between Adam, Jeff, and Jack for the last 3 spots. There was at some point Bruce just beat out Gavin, I believe, for what would be somewhere along the lines of 5th or 4th. And then, yeah, the last 2, which is Jeff and Craig, who were interchanging a few times before the end of the game. So final placements for that. Adam in 8th, Jack in 7th, Jeff in 6th, Gavin in 5th, Bruce in 4th, Craig in 3rd, Michael in 2nd, and Jeremy in 1st. Moving on to the next game. Okay, so this is Let's Play Gang Beasts with Kinda Funny. So again, we have the average placement per level, and as you can see, there isn't too much to tell. Michael was actually extremely consistent, which is quite a good thing. It means that there was a few times where he was dying or falling off, or just like removing himself in a hazardous way. You can see that particularly Nick got better at the game as time went on, which is good, considering I think he did extremely poorly. Tim got worse at the game consistently, so Jack had a very odd performance. He did well, poor, and then, yeah, sort of flatlined in the middle. Then otherwise, yeah, that's all that can really be inferred from this. I think looking at it, I've misspelled Greg, but just ignore that. Greg had one of the most varied performances, and his strategies of hiding worked extremely well for him, and gave him extremely good grounds in terms of catching up or getting a lower placement on most maps that he played. Moving on to the probability of 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, you can see that apparently Jeremy, again, sitting in highest probability of 1st, followed by Jack, then a tie between Michael and Greg, or Gateg as I've apparently called it. Bringing up the rear significantly is Nick, with over 45% of the 8th places. Nick was extremely in his own game, like an extreme outlier. It was almost as if he didn't need to be there for anyone else to give much of a shit. Other than that, yeah, I believe Michael and Jeremy, as you can see, are their positions are very close, and a lot of their area comes towards first and second and third, and then it drops as it gets towards the end. Other than that, just looking, a large spike for both Ryan and Greg for third place. Fourth place was owned by Colin, and then apparently Ryan and Jack were also best positioned for sixth. Those are the only ones that notably stand out for me, and clearly you can see Nick got 0% for third. Okay, onto the placements per round. So this is the average, the adjusted average per round. So basically, yeah, once they, like, if they got 8th in the first round and then 1 in the second round, the average would drop straight down to 4, and it just keeps averaging across. So it smooths. So by the end, you can see Nick never crossed borders with anyone else. He was consistently and firmly in 8th place the entire game. Colin brought up into 7th. At some point after the first 6 or 7 rounds, Colin moved stably into 7th. Towards the end of the game, Tim was apparently performing worse than he was in the first half of the game, and actually almost caught up to Colin. But those two were close to performing at the similar level, which is at least good. Then bringing up first, second, third, and fourth, you can see there was quite a bit of crossover, with the exception of Ryan, who, after about halfway through the video, consistently stayed in first place for the rest of the game. Yeah, second and third was going between Jack and Michael. Michael performed well, got worse, and then recovered, which is pretty good. So final placements for this game. Nick in 8th with a 5.89, which I believe is the worst score so far throughout all the videos that I've done so far, just in terms of this 8-man game, the last 8-man game, just because those are the only two that I can use as a basis, because I'm not going to compare it to the 6-man ones or the 4-man ones from the previous year. Colin sitting in 7th place, Tim in 6th, Greg in 5th, Ryan 4th, Jack in 3rd, Michael 2nd, Jeremy 1st. So there we go. If you have any opinions on how I can improve the videos, or what statistics I could add, just do let me know, or if you would like a different way of me registering the information that I'm collecting, then yeah, do inform me. Otherwise, I also did leave out a significant amount of data on who killed who, just to decrease the length of this video, considering it had to be of 3. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you for the next year.